I hope, truly, from the bottom of my heart, that all your dreams will come true.
Thank you.
I truly hope that. I hope that, and I hope that the world will accommodate your wants and your needs. I really hope so.
Thank you.
And I mean, because it's sad if you can't have that, because I know how fucking happy I am with my family, and like I feel bad if that's something you want, and because of the nature of the world and the nature of people's opinions, that you can't have that. And obviously I can't change people's minds, but if it's any sort of solace, I apologize for the world.
It's not your fault.
I know.
You're part of the solution.
Oh, thanks. Do we have marches here?
We used to in
Or will
Bali.
we just get fucking pelleted
We used to.
and tear gassed
We used
and
to.
sprayed down?
So, like, Indonesia has some stricter laws with adoption.
You don't have to adopt. If you want a kid with an afro, I can.
Yeah, okay, because
right.
we're fed information that suggests that LGBT causes, like, longsor and everything else, tsunami. We're gonna come to stone you. Do you want to be shot? And also, right, it's like, do I want to? It's like, no,
Of
I
course
don't.
not.
But thank you for asking. I don't consent to being shot.
What's up, people of the internet? We are back with another episode of The Bare Truth, and today is the first episode of Season 3. Thanks for everyone that has joined me on this journey. Don't forget to watch the previous podcast if you haven't already, and also don't forget to hit that subscribe button so we can keep doing what we do. I am honored to introduce today's guest on The Bare Truth. She is one of Indonesia's most vocal LGBTQ rights activists, using her musical talent as a platform for her preaching, reaching over 3 million streams on Spotify. She first tasted the media spotlight when a video of her coming out as a gay Indonesian musician went viral on Twitter and has since appeared in the South China Morning Post, The Guardian, BuzzFeed, and other international news and media platforms. Currently living in Bali, she routinely performs in music festivals and appears on interviews and podcasts as a defender of the LGBTQ community, always reliable and ready to stand up for the rights of her community. She is a stalwart figure, and one could argue the face of LGBTQ activism in Indonesia. Please welcome Kai Mata. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
So ever since I ran this podcast, I had like a list of people that I wanted to be on it, and the list has grown, it's shrunk. I've moved people around, but the one name that has always been on it, and I'm not kidding, has been Kai Mata. And I'm so glad finally season 3, after 7 episodes, you're here.
Thank you so very much for having me,
Dude,
Brendan.
I'm so excited. So how long are you in Jakarta for?
Until Tuesday, so
Until
very
Tuesday.
short.
That's very short.
Yeah. So I'm doing yours today, Under the
Inda,
Influence
uh-huh.
tomorrow.
Wow.
Yes.
Packed schedule.
Packed schedule. I'm just here for media.
Right. So before we get into the real shit, I just want to know, obviously, how you're doing. Last time we met was here. We went to Bali, me and my family, on a family trip, and I had some work things as well. Called her up. She's my girl. And she said, hey, I'm performing. Why don't you come? It's very kid-friendly. Athena had a great time. I had a great time.
Oh.
Thank you for the tickets. Amazing.
course.
So do you perform like that all the time? That's like probably you get a lot of concert calls and stuff, right? Festivals and stuff?
Practically at this point only play events and festivals.
Mhm.
Yeah. So yeah. Now that we are returning to more live events, it's been picking up in pace.
Right, because of COVID, right?
Yeah, that was weird.
Yeah, and especially for a performer, not just a music, because there's musicians and there's performers. Like some musicians are purely studio based. Like you're a performer, Like
Yeah.
you're very community oriented. So yeah, I mean, COVID must have been tough, but I'm glad that you're back on your feet again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Yeah, I have a few meetings and really wanted to just make sure I could have time to be on your podcast
Oh, wow, you
and
flatter me.
Inda's. So I just lumped them all into one trip and said I have the time.
Yeah. I mean, last time you were back here was when?
March of 2020.
March, right. Yeah, that's a while. I mean,
Right.
you're comfortable in Bali.
I am.
You have a great community there. I met your partner and all your friends and everything.
Yes.
Great people.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And they loved you.
Oh, yes.
Yes.
You gave us a shout out too. That
Of
was
course,
amazing.
got your wife's name wrong, obviously.
Talk me through your decision when you finished, when you moved back from the States and everything, got done with college. You decided to move to Bali. I can kind of already imagine why you chose to live in Bali as opposed to here. But can you just talk me through it? Is it just because it's more liberal? Is there more business opportunities? It's obviously more accepting there. And talk me through it.
It is the least intolerant place in Indonesia to be in the LGBTQ plus community. It's what I would say. It is a little more accepting, but I would say within Indonesia, acceptance comes from the further you are from family, the more accepting it'll be.
Yeah.
Because of like how collectivistic our culture is, you know,
Right.
like you as a person are a reflection on your family,
Right.
whether you like it or not.
Right.
So.
Yeah.
If I were out in Jakarta and doing a lot of gay advocacy in Jakarta, I would love to do so, even if it has a lot of risks associated with it. But I don't want those risks to extend to my family.
To your family, right. And, I mean, a family name, to an extent, is a burden, too, you know, obviously. And then, like, as you said, you are a reflection of the entire family. So I understand that, on one hand, you want to push this agenda, and you don't mind the flack that you get from the media and everyone else, but you don't want that to extend to your family.
And it's like, you know, you went to university, right? And you left Canada and went to Australia.
Yeah, that's right.
Right? I left university as well. I was in the USA for college for a valiant effort of 10 weeks. So strong. I know. When our school really pushed college is the way forward.
Straight down our throats.
And I was just like, goodbye.
No, but yeah, I mean, the older we get, like, I remember, man, being in high school, it seemed like college was such a make or break decision.
Yeah.
Like, the way our school pointed it at us was like, hey, man, where you go, like, this is gonna define the rest of your life, you know?
Yeah, and if you don't go to college, what are you doing?
Right. You know, I mean, because they're so focused on academics and everything, they don't want to tell you, like, hey, you know what? There are actually other options. But us as, like, you know, now you see entrepreneurs and people who are talented in their own fields, like, there are other ways out, guys. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like,
I know. And like I just think about our friends from high school we're so artistic.
Yeah,
I think of Hafiz.
Exactly. You know, he went to Boston Northwestern, I think, for Northwestern University. Northeastern, sorry. Oh, you know more than me. He went to Northeastern for like economics or business or something like that.
Yeah.
And now he's making mad moves in the music industry.
Yes, he is a professional producer.
Exactly.
And he could not get a job as
in his field.
Yes.
Exactly. So honestly, guys, like, this is not the first time the topic of university has come up on the podcast. It's not make or break. Like, obviously, I don't want to tell you guys, don't go to fucking school. Obviously,
Right.
You should. But I'm just saying there are other options and there are other ways. And you should always keep your head up.
You graduated.
Yeah. But what I'm doing has nothing to do with that as well.
Well, some will say that the diligence and the, like, rajin aspect
Okay, I see.
was taught from university.
I see. Yeah, that makes sense. But, I mean, you can learn it in other ways, too, right?
I know. I think the most important thing is that we continuously learn.
Yeah.
Even when we're not in school, that we have to learn. And either that's us teaching ourselves or us learning through institutions.
Right.
But to continue to expand our understanding of the world and our viewpoint and our awareness of our place
always
in the
growing.
world is what we need to continuously develop as people.
Of course. You don't want to stay stagnant, especially at our age. We're like, this is the age where we're supposed to be, you know, grinding and trying to do as many things as we can, trying to get to know as many people as we can, you know.
Networking.
You know? But yeah, that's another thing because, I mean, when we went to school, besides the education, the other important thing is, you know, knowing people, you know, the connections that you bring because you guys might not know, but I know her from school and, like, I would probably have a harder time approaching her if we didn't know each other from before, you know? So obviously it's really important as well, networking, getting to know people. And I remember the first time we met, actually, it was like maybe when did you come to?
9th grade.
Was it 9th grade?
9th grade.
9th grade, and she was always like a hippie, you know, dressed always as a hippie, and I loved it. And we got to know each other, and we were part of this one club at school, right? We don't have to mention what school it is. It was a music club essentially.
Yeah.
And we would be, here it is, I have pictures, there it is. And we, and we were in charge of, so the school would host concerts 2 or 3 times a year.
Yes.
We would always perform,
Mhm.
right? At Unplugged and everything. And that was actually how we met. So we were part of the committee. And a story, can you tell us how you got your awesome stage name, actually?
Everyone asks me this, and I always just have to say it was a random name Brandon Rusty came up with for out of nowhere.
Yeah.
I was like standing in line somewhere in the theater,
Yeah.
and you just said, "Eh, kay mata." And I was
Yeah,
like,
and
"What?"
it just stuck, right?
Right, and I was like, "What?" that came out of nowhere, and
Yeah.
it was just you.
It was. So
yeah.
usually because she was you were the president of the club, I remember,
In
right?
junior year, I
In
was.
junior, yeah, because she's the president. She's always the MC. Whenever we have performance, she's the one that says, "Please welcome the next band," yada yada yada. And so when it was her chance to perform, obviously she couldn't MC, right? So we had to take over, and everyone else was like, "Oh, you do it." So I just grabbed the mic and I just stood up and I went, "Please welcome Kai Mata." And she was a bit confused, like, "Is that me?"
I guess it is now.
Yeah, but there you go. It's stuck, and I love it. I think it's an amazing name.
I love it too, and I'm really grateful for you. And I remember when I thanked you like last year for that, and you were shocked. I remembered.
Yeah, I was shocked. I mean, I didn't want to bring it up,
Of course, I remember.
Yeah.
What was your band name?
Walrus Inception. So I wanted to ask as well, actually, about music, especially. So I know that you're a musician. I know that you're an activist. What was your inspiration, or what was your thought behind merging those two together? Because I think that's your niche.
Yeah.
That's your unique selling point. We have people who are musicians. We have people who are, activists. But I think for you to merge those two together and just, it's like, I wouldn't say candy coating, but it's more like, it becomes a more easy pill to swallow when we're not pushing an agenda, but when we're preaching. You know what I'm trying to say?
When we're trying to share and bring awareness to a subject.
Exactly.
No one wants to be told what to do.
There you
But
go.
when you have a good groove, some rhythm, a nice melody, and some poetic lyrics, it ties it all together and makes people drawn to listen.
I
Rather
agree.
than me having to tell someone, they will seek out that information.
Right.
And for me, I've looked at protest songs throughout history in Indonesia and like across the world. Think of like the Cranberries with Zombies, or like Bob Dylan in the USA.
Right.
And I see how music has been used as a vessel to cultivate empathy, to create compassion, and to like tie together movements in
Right.
a way that makes us feel it, not just understand it.
And I think it brings about change. Definitely.
And I think about my position in Indonesia. I'm not going to be a politician here.
No.
No, definitely not. But I can work on things from a grassroots social movement. And I try to
Right.
think of when I was a teenager and like I was like watching like gay YouTube channels just to see what like a same-sex relationship looked like. Because
Right.
we didn't have examples of that.
No, definitely not. If anything, it was hidden from us,
Right, it was hidden from
It's
us.
taboo.
Taboo
Right.
and considered like gossip-worthy.
Right.
So I realized that I wish I had like who I was now or who I am now when I was a kid, and that's how I make my decisions. It's what did I need when I was 15, 16.
Right. Yeah, no, obviously I understand what you said about there's no way you're going to be a politician here. Not just because you don't want to maybe, but like they'll shut you down. And like I was going to ask, right? So about like why you're in Bali and stuff. I know that whenever in Jakarta you're always on your feet because like, Jakarta is it's different than Bali as we talked about before. But I want to ask like the sense of danger do you feel? Is it worse than people think it is? Is it not as bad as people think it is? Have you actually gotten threats like
Oh, of course.
Have you really?
Of course.
Can you tell me about it?
Oh, yeah. There was a photo of me with a rainbow flag in Jakarta.
Uh-huh.
And that's when I'm like, I've got to be very careful when I'm in Jakarta. And it was posted and shared so many times on Facebook in a lot of these conservative groups.
Right.
That were like tagging very conservative political organizations and like
asking them to do something about it?
Yeah, or like to gang up on me or to try to dox me. They're like trying to figure out who I was,
who you are, right?
Where my family lives, and like more information about me, what my like private Facebook page was and stuff like that. And a lot of it is like, we're gonna come to stone you. Do you want to be shot? And
Dude.
also, right? It's like, do I want to? It's like, no,
Of
I
course
don't.
not.
But thank you for asking. I don't consent to being shot. And then it's always mixed with like, oftentimes like, racism in the idea as a Chinese Indonesian. Like, oh, if you want to do this, go back to China and let them kill you there. And I'm like, well, I've lived in Indonesia and my family's been Indonesian for generations.
So it's like double oppression that you feel in some sense, isn't it?
I mean, it is. It's like, as a Chinese Indonesian, I think I've understood what it feels like in Indonesia to be a minority and to see in our recent history and to see the ramifications of that and how we target minorities in this country and say that they're the problem of our country.
Right.
When
like they get scapegoated, you know?
Yeah. And our country is so messed up.
Yeah.
It is. It's okay.
A lot of it is institutional.
And
you know?
every country is so messed up. There's no perfect place. There's nowhere to escape to.
Right. But the scapegoated on like a sect is different, you know?
And especially when the people that are led to believe that are the ones that would benefit most from change.
Yeah. So the thing is, it's tough because, as you guys probably know, I mean, Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. And, like, I mean, it's obviously tough. You can't change people's minds overnight, you know? So I want to know, like, what is a tangible solution, do you think, to you know, acceptance in this country? Because obviously you're a very well-read person, and all these activists, the thing people don't like about it, because they're always complaining. It's not that they complain; they're pushing something. They're trying to, you know, that's their job, you know, to bring about attention to it. But if the president or whoever it is came up to you right now and said like, "Hey, Kai Mata, you know what? You were right. Let's try to solve this problem. Let's try to have the country more accepting." What are the tangible solutions, do you think?
I think it's just education, and not from an aspect of like human rights. Which is a weird place to start with, right? It's an aspect of looking at Indonesia's history. That 20 years ago, 30 years ago, Indonesia was a lot more accepting and tolerant. And that in our traditions as such a diverse archipelago, we've had queerness represented in different...
Yeah, in Waria and everything, right?
Exactly. Like, do you remember what we would see on the television, like the soap operas back
Opera
when we were younger?
Java and stuff,
Right, and of course that was like the idea of like trans people played a comedic relief, right? Right. But we saw them more often.
Right.
And they were considered like the jests.
Right. Even if it was a parody, at least it's representative, right?
Right.
And if anything, Bhinneka Tunggal Ika in the Indonesian motto, it's supposed to be unity
in diversity, which is so apt for this country considering we are so many, like thousands of cultures, hundreds of languages,
right,
like so many religions, and inclusive of that is like a lot of identities beyond that,
right.
We choose not to really focus on that aspect,
and it's weird if you say unity and diversity, but to nitpick which ones you're allowed to accept and which ones you're not is a bit weird, no?
Right. You know, I just think about like the fact that only 6 religions exist in this country. Only 6.
Right, exactly.
Nothing else exists.
In Western countries, again, not to say like, we have to follow them or anything. Just you have like the national laws, and then you have, you know, whatever religious beliefs you have, and they're not at all combined, you know? They're not anything together, you know? But in Indonesia, the thing is like with things like marriage, divorce, you know, sexual preference even, or like what's it called? Warisan. What's warisan? Like wealth that goes down to your family. Inheritance. So Islam has its own laws regarding that. Like for example, if a man has a wife and then he dies, but he doesn't have any kids, like the wife gets sekian percent, or like 20% for the son, 20% for the daughter. Whereas, you know, in Western countries, if you have a will and testimony, even like if you're like the richest motherfucker on the planet and you say, when I die, I want all my money to go to my dog, or like to charity, or like to this one person, dude, they're obligated to do it. They have no fucking choice. But here the issue is because you have two streams of philosophical thinking. Even if you write, like, for example, I'm Muslim. If I write, I want all my money to go to my daughter, right? If it doesn't, you know, accommodate the Islam laws, they can actually argue that because they have what's it called, Islamic law. They can say, hey, that's not right. You have to do this. So is part of finding the solution to acceptance in this country dividing religious beliefs with national laws?
I think so. I have to be very careful when speaking about religion.
Of course,
And I've been
of
told
course.
to be very careful.
Of course.
After Ahok, especially. So I'm aware of that. I think one of the things is like, religion is a tool like anything else. It can be used to build a house or bludgeon someone.
Right.
How we choose to use religion is an individual choice.
Right.
But that is affected by the institutions that govern us.
Right.
I think to anything that strips away people's choices in ways that don't really affect other people and that limits our ability to operate as educated people is something we need to work on, and it starts with educating ourselves first so we can make the right decisions, because
Right.
a lot of us in Indonesia are not well versed on how to actually like manage our wealth in
Yeah.
our state,
Right.
or what it actually means. I think about how ridiculous it is that you have to have the same religion to get married in this country.
Exactly. I hope one day, right? But let's not even talk about same-sex marriage. Even like interreligious marriage, here you're not allowed. That's why I have tons of friends. I mean, we grew up in international, the international bubble, so we have lots of multicultural friends. My friends who are getting married like here, they have a lot of trouble with that, because even my wife, she comes from a Jewish background, and so we had to, there's a lot, and it's like you can get married for KTP, like nationally legally married, and then you can get the Islam marriage, and it's like, I don't know. I think on one hand, it is good, obviously, that all the decisions we make, we keep into mind the religious aspect, but also I think there's beneficial movement. I think if we were to separate, the national laws and the religious beliefs.
But there are 6 recognized religions here, and I know a lot of Buddhist people don't get married in Indonesian paper.
Yes.
So when then, like, let's say in a heterosexual coupling, a woman is pregnant and gives birth, her husband, because he's not legally listed as her husband, is not considered on paper the father of that child.
Right. And the kartu keluarga, it's only the mom and the kid,
exactly. Right? So that's when it's like, how do we respect religions in this aspect without respecting all the religions that Indonesia recognizes? I think of the schools that provincially try to mandate hijab on everyone, even if they are not Muslim, or even if they are Muslim but don't want to wear a hijab.
Right.
Or I think about how certain professions are kind of mandated to wear a hijab, even if they don't want to.
You're right.
Or even if they're not of that religion.
Right.
And it makes me, I have questions.
Yeah.
And I want to know then, how do we incorporate the idea of Indonesia as a country that recognizes more religions than just one?
Of course. I think it comes with belief and trust, because, again, I'm glad that you brought up Ahok. He's a double minority in the sense where he's Chinese Indonesian and he's not Muslim, right?
Yeah.
I think he was a good candidate. I think he had good things, and it's tough because we look at the U.S. and I think it was a huge deal that Barack Obama was the first black president.
Yeah.
In terms like that, there's a racial thing and then a religious thing, right? With Ahok, he had a double whammy in terms where he's the minority religious wise and he's also the minority race wise, right? And I think a large symbol of our ability to grow as a people would be when we start accepting minorities in positions of power.
Right.
I think,
but Indonesia's so tied with identity politics.
Yeah.
Where you're only supposed to vote for people that look like you.
Right.
Or that not even are like you, because sometimes people's values in what they practice is very different than like what they claim to be based on a religion. And that's the harshest part. It's like, how do we enact change when the people who need the change the most are not in the positions of power to make it happen?
Right. Yeah, and not represented, obviously,
not represented and not allowed to be, because Indonesia has such like rubber laws.
Yeah.
Anything can be used against you. Indonesia has such heavy laws against like defamation and blasphemy. That you can use that on anything.
Anything. Exactly. Yeah, it's It's sensitive, man. That's why I'm glad that you're media trained.
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I think that's like one of the most important things for activists, especially here, to be
Yeah.
media trained, to be able to push your agenda, tell your story, but not step on any little landmines that they can just booby trap you with, because the media here are fucking assholes.
Exactly. They are. You know it.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it's just like I was told by a human rights consultant
Yeah.
who had an emergency meeting with me last year. He's like, he was on vacation with his family and he brought his 10-year-old daughter to meet with me, and he had a serious conversation, sit down with me at a cafe in Bali, saying,
Right.
you remind me a lot of Ahok. And people say I can smell danger, and I smelled danger with Ahok, and I smell it with you. And I said, what should I do, Pa? Should I run? And he said, no, stay here, but be prepared for prison, and be prepared because you're emotionally strong but physically weak.
He said that to you.
He did. And he said, I read the things you say and they're really good, you're saying that, but what you say now, even though you're careful, will get you in trouble.
Yeah. I think he's right to an extent.
I think
obviously.
so too.
I think there is a very thin line between, the thing as you were saying with blasphemy and all that and defamation. There's a thin line between pushing your agenda, telling your story, and educating the masses, and the line between that and putting down institutions or religious institutions, or talking down, or seeming like you're betraying the Indonesian philosophy and beliefs.
And you have to be so careful with that.
You have to be careful. But I think you're quite well media trained. I mean,
Thank you. I'm very nationalistic in the idea of Bhinneka Tunggal Ika.
Yeah, the thing is, you love this country.
I love this country, and I love the ability to be here.
Right.
So as much as people say you should leave, it'll be better for you to live somewhere else, especially if you have the opportunity. I say I do have that opportunity, but I've had to live outside of Indonesia because I'm Chinese Indonesian before. I'm not going to live outside of Indonesia now for being gay.
Right.
And
Right. You're not going to let them kick you out twice.
I'm not going to let them kick me out twice.
Exactly.
Once was enough. And
Exactly.
I was a baby, so I had no choice.
Right,
But
right,
now I'm
right.
an adult.
Yeah, now you can make your own decisions. Exactly.
Exactly. And I choose to stay because if I don't, then what is going to become of the country we call our Tanah Air?
Right. That's really commendable, because even people not in your position, even people who study abroad, a lot of them don't like coming back. They're like, hey man, if I have an option to live there, and then I will. But I think part of our, I don't want to sound patriotic as shit, but part of our duty, I think, despite the fact that we were studying abroad or whatever, is to bring our knowledge and contribute it back into our society.
Right.
I think.
In a way that is representative of Indonesia, not us importing Western
No,
values.
yeah, exactly.
But that we are truly expressing what it is to be Indonesian, which is
Right.
to be diverse,
Right.
which is to be multicultural.
Exactly. So, again, that was one of my questions. I wanted to ask also, when you wanted to be an activist, was it one compelling event that you were like, okay, I have to do this? Was it more of a, if not me, then who type shit? Because if you really ask me, how many Indonesian lesbian activists do I know? I don't know much, and I genuinely think you're one of the, I'm not sure if you're one of the first, and I don't want to sound ignorant or arrogant, but I think you are really one of the first waves of people that are doing this, and I commend that. So for you, what was the tipping point when you were like, okay, I have to stay here, I'm not gonna go again?
There are a lot of people actually doing a lot of advocacy for LGBTQ plus communities in Indonesia. A lot of them focus on academics, which is a great way to do so, right? To try to dispel it from an institutional level
Right.
that is a little more protected. And I think I am given the title of doing so in a pioneering way within music.
That's
and
the word I was
entertainment
looking
industry.
for. That's the word.
And what made me decide to do this was always a slow decision to just include this in my music. My music has always been a vessel for me to tell stories. I think words are very powerful. Music is even more powerful. So to be able to explain who I am and to share how I'm feeling with song is such a beautiful gift, and especially to have a platform
Right.
that people will listen to.
Right.
But what really pushed me and what made me really famous for it and has solidified my position for this was in the early 2020 when what was it? The Family Resilience Bill came out, which would try to mandate conversion therapy for LGBTQ plus individuals in Indonesia. And mandate families reporting on people for like sexual deviance is what they called it. That bill did not pass, right? And like everyone's a sexual.
Oh, but the
deviant.
bill did not pass.
No, thank goodness. Thank goodness, because I publicly went out and was like, "Hi, I'm Kaimara. I'm Indonesian, and I'm flaming gay." So
I saw it. It was like 500,000 likes, millions of views. I love it.
I had 19 Twitter followers when I posted that.
Yeah,
And that
just skyrocketed
blew up, and that solidified my position. That drew a lot of attention to me.
Right.
Nationally, a lot of controversy. Internationally, a lot of attention.
So I want to know your thought process when you were posting that video. What was going? Were you like, you obviously you're a smart girl. You're aware of the amount of danger that you are introducing. You are aware. And so like, what was your thought? Were you just like, was it a spur of the moment? You're like, fuck it, I'm gonna do it no matter what, or did you deliberate over and over? Did you? Obviously, you're an adult, so you don't have to ask permission for your parents. But did you tell them like, hey, like, this is just something I have to do? You know what I mean?
I didn't tell my parents. Also, like, I was impulsive. I recorded a 30-minute video, like, on my phone, sitting in my living room at that point, and I whittled it down to a 1-minute video.
Yeah.
That was just like the meat and potatoes of it.
Right.
And I didn't really think it through. I posted it, went off my merry day, checked my phone at lunch, and was like, oh my gosh, I think I've made a big decision.
But I'm really glad you did.
Me too.
Yeah.
And like, I have to recognize that a part of my advocacy is also trying to find my niche in music.
Mm-hmm.
How can I best use my music to be heard?
Mm-hmm.
It feels weird when you like post a song and you get one view. And
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
yourself.
Of course.
And this has been a natural outlet for people to be interested and drawn to my stories. And even now, when it's not necessarily like very clearly about like gay discrimination or anything queer, but just about like my love life, which is necessarily always going to be queer,
right?
Or like just how I am. That ends up being a representation of showing what someone who is LGBTQ plus is, which is a person, complex, many emotions, many interests, that just also happens to be queer. Yeah.
And obviously with music, I mean, it doesn't have to be literal, you know? Like, obviously some of your music is literal.
Right.
You know?
Yeah, like, let's be bernyanyi.
Yeah,
very
exactly.
direct.
But a lot of it is also, you know, reading between the lines, and I think that's the beauty about music, you know? You can interpret it, so it's not like you have to be gay to listen to your music.
No, but it does help.
It does. No, I absolutely love it. This is a bit of a personal question. When did you know?
It was never clear. And also, it's hard to know when we don't have an example that we saw.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what I felt towards other women when I was feeling them. I was like, is this just like a weird form of like deeper friendship?
Yeah.
Or like,
is it bromosexuality? You know?
Right. Or like, oh, maybe like if I have sex with a man, I will like it. Right? And like just try it out.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, maybe it wasn't that man I liked. Maybe I'll try a different one. And I was like, nah, it's really not working.
It's not working. I've tried.
Yeah. And I was like, do I just have to like find a fit? Like, you know, like, you just haven't met the right man yet. There are things that I believe myself. Like, do I just have to try, or like, what does attraction even feel like? Because I didn't understand that I felt that way towards like women, because I didn't know what it was, and it wasn't exemplified, and I didn't know it was even an option for a lot of my life. But also the aspect of like, maybe I will be attracted to like this man if I just go on enough dates with him, or like. Yeah,
but you don't want to force love.
Right.
It's supposed to come naturally.
But I didn't know that.
Right.
You know, so like, I think a part of me always knew, but a big part of me also did not recognize it.
Yeah.
And it took a while, and now that like I'm in a happy, healthy, loving relationship with
true to yourself also.
Exactly, truly myself with a beautiful woman, and I know myself. It feels like we get to relive that teenage puppy love moments that I know you had in high school.
Yeah.
And
with multiple women.
Sorry, Caroline.
When you knew, and then you were closeted, and then you opened up, how long were you closeted for?
It was like a solid 3 years of like, I feel like something is weird.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. How do I even describe it? What am I even supposed to do? Should I just hide this for the rest of my life and marry a Chinese Indonesian man? And then also, you see so many relationships here. I see a lot of relationships of like my parents' friends. They're not happy.
Yeah.
And it's like our culture kind of has an arranged marriage, but not really arranged.
No, definitely. No, I agree.
Yes.
If arranged is too literal of a term, it's directed.
It's
you know?
directed. They're
Yeah.
like, you should try to date this person.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I definitely agree.
Right, like, it's like, how do you expand your palm oil empires together? Right? It's pretty much how it is. So, yeah.
I think we're similar in a good way in that we're both very true to ourselves and we're both obviously quite rebellious people. So we're willing to fight for what we believe in. We're willing to fight for who we love and stuff. And I mean, despite going to an international school, my parents, they're quite conservative people too. And they'd always told me, oh, you're going to marry a Muslim Javanese woman and you're going to love it. And I'm like, okay, sure. I mean, if it works, it works, But I mean, they made the fatal error of putting me into an international school. So I had to fight for my love life. Obviously not as much as you had because you were just, oppressed and suppressed in many other ways, but I experienced that too in the way that both the race of my beautiful wife is different from mine and the religion.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't even Islam to Christian, it was Islam to Judaism. And we were like mortal fucking enemies, like 1,000 years ago, like my ancestors were beheading hers,
Yeah, I know. So even though it's one Abrahamic religion.
It is. Exactly. So I had to fight for it too. And I have seen people, both friends and family, I've seen that have just like, they put their head down and they're like, you know what, maybe I should listen to what my parents want. But I thought it the same way as you. I thought, you know what, on one hand, I have to make my parents happy. I'm responsible for them. Like, I have to make them happy. But dude, like, that's the person that I'm going to be marrying, Like, this is the person that at night before I sleep, I'm going to see your fucking face. The first thing in the morning when I wake up, I'm going to see your fucking face,
Yeah.
And then, like, it's sad to say, but at some point, our parents and everyone else is going to be gone, and it's just me and that person. And if I don't love her, it's going to cause even more problems, I think, down the line if we don't love each other and then we separate or everything.
Resentment.
So, resentment, and it comes out in bad ways. And sometimes, like, the kids will see it. It's not good. And I've always been an advocate for loving who you love,
Exactly.
In all ways. Different race, different gender, same gender, different religion. And I think, like, being true to yourself is really, really important.
Right. And I think about our relationships we have that are core to us, like our parents, our siblings. We did not choose our parents.
No.
We did not choose our siblings. But we sure as hell will choose who our partner is.
Exactly.
That is our choice.
Exactly.
Everything else was made for us. But we get to choose who we wake up next to.
Right. Because, yeah, as I said, like, it seems like a short-term solution for a problem that needs a long-term solution. If someone's like, oh, you're not married yet? Here. I mean, we're both rebellious and true to ourselves in that way, which is obviously really, really good,
Mm-hmm.
Here's another thing. So, as I said, I'm obviously, because I'm internationally educated, I'm quite an accepting person, and I'm liberal as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I do still have some conservative beliefs. So I want to talk about fluidity.
Ooh.
And the thing I love about you is that we can always communicate and discuss and debate without any bad feelings, really.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, we can agree to disagree, but mostly we agree on things, So I want to ask, I do believe that sexuality is fluid.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that.
Okay.
Because I think it's a spectrum. Like, I do know friends who are absolutely homophobic as hell. And then myself, when I see a good-looking guy, I'll mention it to my wife.
Exactly.
I'll be like, hey, yo, babe, like, that guy's hot, man.
Yeah.
I'll say it, So in that sense, even, I'm on the spectrum, too. I'm not fully against
But you can
other males.
You can see the beauty.
Exactly. I can see the beauty and I can accept it and I can understand why other people would be, sexually attracted to that person.
By the way, that is like that confidence and that security is such an attractive trait. And I love it.
I hear that too because
Yeah.
you're comfortable with your sexuality.
Exactly.
And you're not threatened by other people. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I think sexuality is fluid. But I do want to ask about gender because I believe that gender is you are born with one or the other. Essentially, this is what I think. Right?
Okay.
You're biologically male or female, whether you have a sex change or whatever during your lifespan. That's a whole other thing. But I believe that you are either male or female when you're born. However, sexuality, your preference, now that's something that's fluid, that can change.
Okay.
Do you agree with that, or yeah, what do you think?
When you say it like this, I don't. I guess my question is, how do we define gender? If we're defining gender based on genitals.
Yeah, genitalia.
Genitalia,
Yeah.
right? Someone is born with a penis or a vagina
Right.
or potentially a mixture of the both if they're
Right.
intersex, which is like 1 to 2% of the population.
Yeah.
A good amount of the
Yeah,
population.
actually, I have seen that does happen.
Right. And then that's like the same amount of people with like who are gingers are also intersex in the word, like percentage-wise, right?
If you put it that way,
So
yeah, that's true.
we don't consider gingers
Humans.
like abnormalities, right?
Yeah.
So it's like, how do we define what we define as a woman or a man? If it's solely based on genitalia, then that is a criteria that you can say that someone was born with like a penis,
Right.
but their gender, how they express themselves, and their identity
Okay.
is a woman.
So gender is not just definable purely by what genitalia you have,
No.
but also how you express yourself.
Yes.
Ah, okay.
So, and like we saw that throughout Indonesian culture, like in South Sulawesi, predominantly, there's like the Bugis tribe as well as like the Toraja people, which had like 5 different genders that were expressed. And the highest level of like their hierarchy of society, like their priest, was
I know this.
exactly. So like this was part of our Indonesian culture
Right.
and our history, and it's only more recently kind of gone away. They still practice this, thankfully they've maintained their traditions.
Right.
But like so it's like, how do we see our definition of what gender is?
Right.
And change it based on like not just someone's genitals, right? Because that's something, I don't know what your genitals look like.
Fair enough.
Right? You know, but I know you're a man.
Right.
Right? And I don't need to see that in order to know that you're a man.
Right.
And I wouldn't say that that's what defines you as a man.
Right.
Right?
Right.
I would think there's
right.
so many qualities of you that you would say are very masculine.
Right.
Right?
And none of it have to do with my dick, right?
Right.
Yeah, right.
So I say, can we use that as a way to view other people and respect that like someone may have been assigned the gender of like male at birth,
Right.
but through the way they hold themselves in the world and want to be seen,
And the way they view themselves
exactly,
too, right? Yeah, right.
you know,
right.
and not to say that feminine and masculine traits are always like women have to be very girly and like men have to be very masculine.
Right,
Like,
right.
That's where the idea of like gender is so expansive in that way. If we're viewing it as genitalia, most people are either born with one set or another.
Understood.
But if we're viewing it from an aspect of how do we actually see other people in the world and experience the world and walk in the world, there's so many more options than that.
I mean, throughout my entire life, because sorry, but I haven't really been reading into it too much and all that. Even though I support you, you know, from your head to your toes. You know, I love you and what you're doing, but I'm not that well versed in it. So to hear that is really important for me too, because I've always just thought gender was purely, you know, whether you have a dick or a pussy, you know,
Right.
obviously.
And it's like that becomes so like limiting, right?
Yeah.
There are other ways you express your gender.
Obviously, with all, you know, thoughts, beliefs, philosophies, whatever you like to call it, they're both ends of the spectrum. They're radicals on either side.
Yeah.
They're complete homophobes. I've seen them. I know some, you know. And then, obviously, this is another thing. Like, I learned about, what's the word, feminism when I was in high school. And
Did you?
Who
Who taught you?
my ex. You remember her?
Yes.
Yeah. So I have quite a good understanding. That's probably the only positive thing I took away from that relationship. You know, she's a Tumblr girl, and I read all that shit. You know, she taught me a lot in that sense, and I understood at some point actually that feminism is not a threat to masculinity, because I used to think feminism means women over men. You know, but then after learning about it and reading about it, I actually learned that actually it's just equality. Feminism is just, you know, we believe in equality, you know. It's not, you know, women over men, you know. It's not a threat to my manlyhood, to males. It's not. So going off of that, I want to ask also about, you know, gender fluidity and sexual preference. So I saw this not long ago, and it's so those two kids, they're at a rally. So those are dads.
Yeah.
Two dads and the kids. They have a sign that says "Proud Future Lesbian." And then down here, the guy says, "This is child abuse. Change my mind." So My question is this, right? I think that before a certain age, kids don't know who they want to be, and kids don't know their sexual preference. And I think telling a 4-year-old girl that she's gonna be a lesbian is just as bad.
Yeah.
Do you think so?
I think so too. It's also like the idea like this is something you do in the future.
Right.
Ties the identity of being a lesbian solely to like your sexual acts.
Right.
When it's not.
Right.
Right? I also believe that the whole thing is like, you know, there are people I know that like I knew when I was a kid, and that was their choice to know that, and it was like they felt it in themselves. I think that kid may be too young to have made that sign themselves.
Yeah.
And that's when it comes in like if someone else is defining our identity, that is not then our identity.
Right, then that's just as bad, right?
It is bad and it is harmful. And
Yeah.
and I think what is the best thing to do is to encourage exploration if they want to.
Right.
Like the idea of not having such gender-specific toys with kids.
Right.
Or like not being afraid if like a son wants to play with makeup.
Right. Or if my daughter wants to do taekwondo or like
No, that'd be good for your
yeah,
daughter.
yeah, which she does, by the way.
Good. It honestly benefits the majority of men. You have a daughter and you want to keep her well-being in mind.
Uh-huh.
And you want the world to be a better place for her. But more so, even just the way you get to express yourself. Some people will hear you say, "Oh, babe, this dude's hot,"
Yeah.
and be like, "Oh, that's so gay,
Yeah,
bro."
you gay man.
And
Yeah.
like, even though that's not right,
Yeah.
and that's so harmful to people like you and being able to
Right.
express yourself.
Of course.
I would say there are, of course, radicals on both sides,
Mhm.
and there are some people that take things to the extreme on all ends of the spectrum.
Mhm.
Most of us don't operate on those radical sides.
Of course.
They're the loudest.
Of course.
But they're not what's representative of, I think, the majority of the population who
Right.
are able to have sit-down conversations like you and I
Like
are
you
having.
know exactly.
Like we just had about gender.
Exactly.
And not feel like we're personally attacking each other.
Yeah.
Or trying to prove one person right or wrong.
Yeah.
If that kid did say to their parents, like, "Oh, Dad, I'm a lesbian," I don't think that's wrong for that kid to say.
Right.
It's just realizing that that's a kid talking.
Right.
And they may change their mind, and we don't hold kids to what they say.
Yeah, exactly.
It's hard to have kids play in this world when everything is digitized and taken photos of
Yeah.
and documented, and it kind of
Digital
holds
footprint type shit, man.
and it holds everything into like permanence.
Yeah.
When this could have honestly just been a fun thing those kids were doing.
Oh,
of, like,
yeah,
being
yeah.
like, "Oh, my dads are gay.
Yeah,
I
yeah,
want to
yeah.
be like my parents."
Right. That would have been enough, you know?
But
exactly.
because it's so digitized and like photographed, we don't know the context behind it.
That's true.
And if
That's
we
true.
see it just as this, we have a lot of
Yeah,
questions.
you can grasp at straws.
Right.
Exactly.
So yeah.
Yeah, that digital footprint thing is true, which is why I went on Facebook when I was making this PowerPoint. And I was trying to find some incriminating shit of yours, but
took
you
it all
cleaned
off.
up well.
Yeah, I recommend it. It
Uh-huh.
took a whole day.
But it's worth it, bro.
It's worth it.
It's so worth it. It's weird because in some states, you aren't old enough to get a driver's license. You aren't old enough to drink.
Mhm.
You aren't old enough to get a tattoo, but you're old enough to change your gender. And for me, I think those 4 things are things that are, let me say, big decisions for the rest of your life that you need to be a certain maturity to make.
Mhm.
Do you get what I'm trying to say?
So when you say change your gender, are you talking about changing your gender markers like on like your passport, or are you talking about like surgery?
I'm not sure. Let's say
Okay.
both.
Let's use America as an example,
Let's.
right? Because that's like
I'm pretty sure that's also what I was talking about. I
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
Usually in order for them to like be identified as like a trans man or a trans girl or trans boy, they go to a lot of therapy, and they have to. Even as an adult, in order to get surgeries, you need to go to therapy for 18
so it's not just you
18
walk
to
in, hey,
24
cut my
months.
dick off, I want a
Exactly.
pussy. I see.
And it's like such an expensive decision to make when you're an adult, because it's often not covered by insurance, so you have to pay out of pocket for that. When it comes to kids, that's when I think oftentimes the conversation is like, this is then a decision that is a major decision.
That's what I'm saying.
We have to think about this thoroughly. What they do now is usually, for some people who want to, hormone suppressants.
Mm-hmm.
So it is making sure that puberty is delayed
Right.
until that child can make a decision.
Can make a proper decision. Right.
Right. I don't know the effects of that long term.
I understand.
But that is, I think, where the more extreme cases of how they're trying to handle trans youth.
Understand. obviously it'd be tough for us because we don't know enough scientifically, but if you were to give an arbitrary opinion about what age you think should be legalized, where people go through not just their representation but the actual surgery, for me it baffles me. Like, this guy's not allowed to drive a car. This guy's not legally an adult. This guy's not allowed to drink or make a tattoo. And I think, despite drinking, making tattoos, and crashing your car is life-changing shit, I don't think it's as big as a decision as this, for example. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think surgeries are something people take a lot of time for.
Yeah.
I understand what you're saying. I thought I could do anything when I was a teenager.
Right.
And I'm glad I didn't do a lot of crazy things.
Right.
I don't think there's necessarily a wrong or right answer. There's some really immature 40-year-olds we know, right?
Oh, yeah.
And, like, at that time, I think it's really an individual case-by-case basis where they really need to have, thorough mental evaluations to understand where they are at, to see any harm that could potentially be done. And I also think that way for, like, breast implants, too. Just to understand what people's psyches are as to why they're being driven to make these decisions.
Right.
If you've taken enough steps to make sure this is a decision that you will be as right as possible for you, go and do so.
Yeah.
And I support that. Then again, people get tattoos of, like, an ex's name.
Yeah.
And,
What do you think about trans? Is it trans? Is trans men female that become male, or yeah, trans men? Okay, trans females in sports, right?
Okay.
So, 2 examples. One was there was this one ex-Navy SEAL, bro. So this motherfucker knows how to fight, right?
Mm-hmm.
He retires. He goes through gender sex change, and then he joins a fighting championship. It's not UFC. UFC is the biggest one, but it's one of them, and it's quite big too. Keep in mind, this guy's biologically a male, but he did the sex change, but he still has, like, the testosterone, the muscles and everything, right?
Is this in the USA?
I think it was. I think it was. And he fought, in the female league, and he didn't just beat the opponent. He, like, beat the living fucking shit out of her. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
And it was, like, one of the worst fight injuries we've ever seen. Like, she blue, bloody, and all that shit, right? And then that's the first example. The second example, there's, like, in college sports, there's, like, in NCAA, there's, like, wrestling and swimming.
Okay.
And there's this one wrestler who was a male and then transitioned into female, and she has, like, an unheard of record of, like, 38-0. You know, she just fucking slaughters the opponents, and then the other one is a swimmer, which was big maybe last year or
Leah?
Yes.
Yeah.
Where, let's say, in this one college they only had a quota of 16 swimmers, and she made that quota, and because she was previously a male and changed into a female, the 17th swimmer, who was, not that good, but, still should have made it, should have gotten that scholarship and whatever, should have, didn't end up making it, right? Because this previously male person essentially took her spot. Do you get what I'm trying to say?
Yeah.
So, do you think it's fair? Do you think there should be another league for trans? Do you think there shouldn't be any trans at all? What's your stance on this?
I think it's a conversation that makes people very heated.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And I also think it's a conversation about a very small amount of the people in the sports industry. It's not the majority of trans people that are competing in highly competitive sports.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And when we talk about, like, we have to be careful when talking about, like, biological differences between people, because then I think immediately to how sports were segregated when black people and white people in the USA were segregated.
Right.
And always the argument is that, like, the argument a lot of Americans back in the day made for slavery is that black people are built to be stronger and more physically strong.
And there's that famous Olympic picture of the black runner who won when he did the... Right.
And, like, then how do we segregate things that are, like, based on biological differences that maybe are due to broad strokes of race, right? That was a big thing for segregation in like universities as well. Is like then we have like black people competing in white sports, then we'll all lose, is what they often said, right? And I was like,
The thing is, there. Sorry, I don't mean to cut you off.
Yeah,
There's truth in. I don't know if I want to say there's truth in that, but it's not. Let me say it's not a coincidence that all the fastest sprinters are black.
right. So should we do a separate league for them? Then are we really going to segregate it based on race too? And like,
That's
so we
true.
give the Chinese people a chance to win in track and field. I know this this swimmer Leah was affected largely, and a lot of this discourse focuses on trans women. So people that were assigned male at birth that transitioned to women. There are also trans men that are competing against cisgender men in leagues. There is like a very famous swimmer in Stanford who is a trans man competing with other men and keeping up, or things like that. And of course, like when understanding that like if you are assigned male at birth and you're more likely to have a lot more testosterone and a different muscle build just based typically on bodies, right? From broad strokes, there are always outliers. That gets really complicated in the discussion. I at some point I'm kind of just like, can we just create a league where everyone can take as many drugs as they want?
Please don't take this out of context, people. When I say another league like the Paralympics, I'm not saying being trans is fucking disability. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying, could we take inspiration from that and then and be like, there is another league for, trans males or trans females, or do you think the way that they're doing it now is fine? Because if I'm allowed to say my opinion, despite the fact that I'm all for it, and I'm sure if I knew this Leah person personally, we'd be friends and whatever. I do understand that 17th swimmer and how she was like, I was supposed to be getting the scholarship or whatever, but then like because this male now became a female, she took my spot. I do understand her. I sympathize with her.
It's unfair to see people slander her name and boo her publicly.
Yeah.
When she's following in lines with the rules of what have been written.
Right. It's, if anything, it's the rules' fault. If anything.
Right. When a bigger discussion is like, yes, she's a taller person than most of the other swimmers she's competing against. And what if that was just how she was naturally born, even if she was assigned female at birth?
Yeah, I see.
And then I think about like the Olympic runner who was intersex and she was kicked out, even though she looked and presented like a stereotypical woman. But they realized she had a little bit of a different like genetic makeup and different hormone that her body naturally produced compared to other people. And they stripped her of her medals.
Yeah.
Is that then fair?
Yeah, that's true. Because females have testosterone too. And males have estrogen as well.
Right. And some people have different levels. It's not like across the board all equal. It just depends on the makeup, even within different ethnic groups.
Yeah.
But I do think we should have an all-white badminton league just to see what that looks like.
It's hard to answer, factually. Do you know what I'm trying to say? Because you can always argue one or the other. I'm not asking you a scientific question necessarily.
There's nuance.
There's nuance, exactly.
And, like, I approach this with nuance because it needs it.
Yeah.
And I think that a lot of the world now is so black and white in how we approach things. And doing so is so divisive.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Q&A.
Okay.
I think this is a great question, actually. You want to read it out?
Are there any stats as to how many openly LGBTQ plus community members there are in the world?
No, in Indonesia.
No. We're all in the closet.
Really?
A good amount are, and a lot of us are not very open about it. We have our friend group, and a lot of the people I hang out with are really only open among each other, not even to their family.
But in, like, let's say, I don't know, the States or other, like, Western countries, are there, what's the word? Not statistics, surveys?
Yeah, and I also think they're very, like, underestimating, right? So, like, I think now, roughly of, like, millennial and under in the USA, it's, like, 20% of the population, which makes
That's large.
Bisexuality.
All right.
That's a good amount of people. Like, people can be, a lot of women and men I know are attracted to other genders besides, like the opposite gender.
Right.
Even if they've never experienced like a same-sex relationship or sex with the same person or same gender, that still is bisexual.
Right. And do you think it would be hard to apply or find that statistic here because of just how closeted people are, you think?
Yeah, I feel like people would be afraid that data would be leaked, like Peduli Lindungi was leaked, so you know. And when it's something sensitive like this, which could make people lose their jobs, could lead to them being ousted from their family and kicked out.
Yeah.
Why risk that?
That's
and I
true.
understand that that's a big risk.
I do think that this is a great question. I do think that if we were to make some sort of, the word I was looking for is census, for sexual preference or anything, and it was anonymous, people would be more willing to answer truthfully.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Yeah.
You know, the amount of like married men I know.
Dude, I know, man.
Right? And like just the amount of people that are in a committed relationship for the show of it because they were told to.
Right.
Like you and I expressed. But have to live a secret life outside of that.
Yeah. There's a lot, bro.
There's a lot.
There's a ton.
Yeah.
2 questions. The first one, you want to read it out?
What is your biggest goal in your LGBTQ plus advocacy? My biggest goal is to make sure that everyone in this world, especially the LGBTQ plus community, knows that they are worthy of living, worthy of loving, and worthy of being loved. A lot of the homophobia people feel is internalized, and they carry it with them, which keeps them from ever really being their true selves and feeling like they can express who they are. So that's my biggest goal, is just to make sure that we all feel like we have a place in this world and that who we are inherently is okay.
Do you think for, legislative or government changes, it would be too much of an ask for this country, do you think?
I think at this point, right now, yes. Yes. I mean, we're having a hard time with human rights in general in this country, which is so weird because we have a growing economy,
right, a
growing middle class, a lot of money coming in and out of this country.
Right.
But a shrinking focus on human rights and a reduction of them. So I think at this point it needs to start socially to change the government.
I agree.
But it's like a chicken or egg situation.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Next one.
What is the best piece of advice you can give to LGBTQ plus youth in Indonesia? I would say is to find your community wherever you are. There are communities in person, and reach out to me if you want to find them. I'll connect you directly because we are a vibrant community, even if we're not public. There are places in a lot of the major cities in Indonesia. But more importantly, only come out when you feel like you are safe to do so. Financially, emotionally, physically, and make sure you have a roof over your head if you do that.
Great. Oh my God, you're amazing.
Thank you.
Next one.
Being an LGBT activist in the largest Muslim country in the world, do you think you can change their views? We don't actually want to hate people, do we? We want to protect ourselves, and at this point, a lot of people are scared about what this change means because we're fed information that suggests that LGBT causes like longsor and everything else, tsunami, or like. I think it's really working for me. Grassroots with the community first, so that everyone can feel more confident in not changing the views of Indonesia, but being able to express who they are so that Indonesia as a whole can see us as humans first rather than anything else.
Right, I agree. And I think, again, going back to that, change is not something that happens overnight, especially with acceptance to things like this, which is why we see, compared to previous generations now, that change has come over time,
It has.
If the goal is to change everyone's opinion, I think that's an impossible task.
No.
It's more about changing, not even changing, growing, developing the opinions of people that are younger. Eventually, when they become in positions of power or when they become part of the workforce, then they have that in mind,
True.
Because it's from, grassroots, as you said.
And, it is unfortunate that it's the older generation making the legislation that
Right.
we now have to live with.
Right.
But also, we're seeing a lot of more acceptance within the young people, but also some extremists, too.
Really?
There is the pendulum swinging,
Yeah.
where there's both that's happening. Worldwide, I think.
Yeah.
But, at this point, it's really just about recognizing that this is not something that is inherently, westernized. That queerness has existed traditionally around the world. In the 20th century, 30, 40 years ago, places like Jogja had, queer magazines. And there were, queer cultures.
No way, did they?
They were passed around, and it was really accepted. And kind of just, they lived their lives. And
right. Yeah, and Jogja is the cultural center of the country.
Exactly,
right?
but we saw that like this culture has existed within Indonesia. To say
Yeah.
that this is like something new and something that's destroying our country, it's been in our country. A lot of it becomes like a whole like not in my backyard. A lot of the conversations I have with people are like, it's okay that you're gay,
Right.
but if my kid,
Right.
God forbid my kid, I'd have to ask how they learned that and what
Right.
happened, and like try to undo that
Yeah.
because that's not what we want for our family.
Yeah.
You can be ashamed. You can be ashamed to your family, but you cannot bring that to mine.
Right.
So that's where like I see that we are like being more socially tolerant within younger communities, and also Brandon and I are in a bubble
Mm-hmm.
of a different people that may not represent the entire population.
Yeah.
It's more cross-cultural, and it is a little more international, which is why we're doing this podcast in English.
Right. Always have Indonesian subtitles though for everyone.
Exactly.
And something that you have to understand too that I think will make you feel a lot better. It's not just the international education kids that are accepting and liberal. A lot of them, especially because the internet exists, social media exists, and you can learn from platforms outside of academics. Even kids going to like national schools or whatever, a lot of them are still very accepting and liberal as well, I think.
That's true, and I
Yeah.
think the more educated you get, the more you can then be aware of other things going on.
Right. What are your main takeaways from being an international student?
Developing a thorough love of other cultures,
Mm.
other people, and recognizing that there's so much I can learn from not just seeing things from my viewpoint. It also taught me that multiple truths can exist and that there's not one absolute truth. We had people of various religions and backgrounds and cultures and different ways they socialized, and the etiquette for socializations are different, and nothing is inherently wrong or right.
Right.
Or foods we eat, right? Some things to you are haram.
Yep.
Some things to others are not. And like culturally that those are not ubiquitously wrong or right.
Right.
It's so hard to explain to other people when they're like, oh, like chicken feet is gross. I'm
Right.
like, yeah,
I fucking love it.
exactly. or like eating a goat, right?
Right.
And that is someone's culture and someone's food.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's commendable. I absolutely love it.
You agree too, though, right?
I completely agree. And I also think that in a sense, homogeny is an enemy of acceptance. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because like despite the fact that I was saying even in national schools people are becoming more accepting and whatever, it is harder factually it is harder to accept others when everyone you see around you is the same.
And
you know
have,
what I mean?
And you have preconceived notions about what people of different religions are because you're not exposed to them.
Exactly.
But once you do meet a lot of people that are like Christian, Jewish, Catholic, whatever, you'll realize they're people.
Yeah.
And some suck and some are great
Yeah.
because they're people.
Exactly.
And I think that is something beautiful. And I think made us a lot more open-minded to not being scared of someone's differences, but also recognizing we have prejudice. We all do. We will all make judgments about someone before we know them.
Yep.
But that it's okay that we change our minds.
Yep. Exactly. And two important ones for me. Do you want to raise a family?
Do I want to raise a family? It's in an ideal situation where the world is perfect, where I am financially set up, and where I feel very ready with a partner. Yes. I don't know if that world exists and will exist within the next 5 to 10 years. So I only want to bring a kid into the world or like adopt one if I know I can be the best parent that I could possibly be for that kid and make sure that they have the best life possible. That would take me being very prepared, and I am very not. So, like, Indonesia has some stricter laws with adoption.
You don't have to adopt. If you want a kid with an afro, I can make you one.
Yeah? Okay. Just make me another one. I'll take it.
So, no, I completely understand. I mean, like, even with... So, family down and family up. What I mean by that is family up is your parents.
Mm-hmm.
Even them, you have the conscientiousness to think, like, look, I want to push my agenda. I want to do this. I want to do that. But I don't want to endanger them.
Yeah.
And you're not even responsible for them. They're your parents. Now think about it if it's family down. Like, if it's your kids, you don't want them to bring them into a world where it's even worse, you know?
Exactly.
You don't want to put your parents into danger. How about your kids? Even
and
more
like,
so.
I can blame my parents. You had me. I didn't choose to be born.
Right, but...
You chose.
Right.
It was your responsibility. But that kid, if I ever have one, I'm choosing to have that kid in my life, whether or not I've made an active choice.
Right.
And that is a big responsibility.
Right, of course. I'm not asking whether you have deliberated it yet and whether you're planning to in the future soon, but I am asking, like, do you fantasize about, romanticize about it? Do you think about it? Like, do you think about, like, oh, when you're, I don't know, 40 or something, and like you're forever home and you have your kids, and do you have a wife? Do you have a husband? Do you have a partner? Do you know what I'm trying to say?
Yeah, like a fantasy of a future.
Right. What is it like?
My lovely partner and me having a house in the middle of nowhere because I don't want to see people. It's I can imagine having like 1 or 2 kids and like a very big yard for them to run around in, a little permaculture garden, and my music studio in one room.
Oh, hell yeah.
A dance studio for my partner. That's something I fantasize about, and just imagining just peace.
I hope truly, from the bottom of my heart, that all your dreams will come true.
Thank
Truly,
you.
I truly hope that. I hope that, and I hope that the world will accommodate your wants and your needs. I really hope so.
Thank you.
And I mean, because it's sad if you can't have that, you know. Because I know how fucking happy I am with my family, and like, I feel bad if that's something you want, and because of the nature of the world and the nature of people's opinions, that you can't have that. And obviously I can't change people's minds, but if it's any sort of solace, I apologize for the world.
It's not your fault.
I know.
You're part of the solution.
Oh, thanks. Kaimat, I'm so happy to have you here, man. A lot of the times I have people here as just, basa-basi type shit. We're talking, but honestly, I learned so much. I'm so happy to have you here. I'm glad that we can discuss, debate, and share each other's opinions, perspectives without, heating up too much, obviously. I absolutely love that you had the time to come here. And next time I'm in Bali, you better be ready. I'm knocking on your doorstep. We're going to hang out again.
We're going to party.
Oh, for sure. Take me to another one of your concerts. I love that shit. Love the community. Everyone's fucking nice to me. Yeah, that's it. Whenever you're back in town, you let me know. If you need anything, I'm your man. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm very lucky to call you a friend, Brandon.
I love you, man.
Love you.
That's a wrap. Woo!